All right, thank you all for joining. Hi, everybody. I'm Karin Pindle, or KP. I'll be your host for today. I'm joined by Laura, one of our senior consultants at Sojourn. We're going to be your presenters for today. And let's dive right in. Just a housekeeping item, you will get this recording. So if you have to jump out early or whatever happens, I will send you the recording. My plan is to always send it the same day, so I will aim to do that. And for anybody that doesn't know me, I do this intro quick because I think most of you do. I'm one of Sojourn's senior consultants, so I focus on MarTech. Marketing automation is my sweet spot, but I've learned quite a bit over the years about other MarTech related to what marketers are trying to tap into to get their jobs done, and the strategy side of marketing. So stepping outside of the technologies and just thinking about people and processes. Obviously, a lot of that can tie back to a system like Eloqua, but I learned a lot from smart people like CMOs and VPs of marketing and IT and salespeople, even those folks. I'm just kidding. So anyway, it's helped me over the last 18 years of my career, starting in sales just for 2 years and then switching over to marketing to really get I think a bunch of different lenses of what's important to folks like yourself. So, but for today, our focus is really all things Eloqua and kittens and hiking. No, I'm just kidding. But this is a picture, so just a little personal note. A couple of weeks ago, I went with my girlfriend and our 3 dogs to the mountains of North Carolina, northwestern North Carolina. I'd never been there. This is, I can't remember the name, Grandfather Mountain somewhere, I think over here, but we hiked a couple spots, and it was just fantastic. It was near Boone, North Carolina, for anybody who's from that area. And we're thinking about moving up that way, not to Boone, too many college students everywhere. But anyway, here's our agenda today for y'all. Well, why do we have a little kid dancing there? I don't know, just because it's cute and interesting to look at. I like to watch it over and over. Anyway, so I'll do our typical relevant reminders. Got quite a few interesting things happening right now in the Eloqua world, so want to make sure you guys know about them. You definitely need to. Laura is going to go through email deliverability, just what is it, and give some definitions to help you wrap your head around it, and dive into tips for how to have the best email deliverability possible. We know email is just one marketing communication channel. We get that, but it is still the #1 most popular marketing channel that people using Eloqua execute on today. Yes, SMS is coming to Eloqua natively next year. That might change things, but still, I don't think it will for many years. I think for most industries, email is going to be the main place that we still communicate with our prospects and customers, members, students, candidates, you name it, leads, whatever you want to call them. And then I'm going to dive into, after Ana Laura, I will talk about what Oracle has responded with to adapt Eloqua to the Apple Mail privacy changes. So we'll talk about that. FYI, the new operating system for Apple Mail, like iPhones that use Apple Mail and others, comes out Monday. So this is super important and timely. And it was, I think, Monday that Oracle announced the changes coming to Eloqua. So I'll highlight those. And then we're going to end with a poll, y'all. I think that's why I had the dancer there. But anyway, so if there's enough time, we're going to go through a couple of questions. I like to poll everybody. Like, I think I do it maybe once a quarter, at least try to do it twice a year with the Eloqua User Group meetings, because I want to know from you, what are your main challenges, so I can try to get presenters to talk about things related to those challenges. And, you know, one of the other things we're going to do the next 2 months, just to give you a preview, October, we're going to hear from Oracle about Unity, their CDP, or customer data platform. You've probably heard CDP. It's a big thing in the world, and especially the marketing world. So we want to understand, what is Oracle Unity? Yes, it's expensive, but what else? Who does it make sense for? Like, what does it bring to me as a marketer using Eloqua? That's what I really want you guys to walk away from, like an overview of it, but also what does it help me with if I'm an Eloqua user? Well, it can do a lot of things, but we'll have that. And then for November, the plan is to have somebody from Oracle come back in and speak about Infinity IQ, which you can kind of think of as a mix of Maximizer and Infinity. If you don't know what either of those are, you'll learn in November. Just other things to consider in Oracle's marketing cloud and how you can get more value from Oracle potentially, and they integrate with Eloqua. So anyway, first things first, the reminders here. So, oh, and if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A. You can put it in the chat and we'll answer it there too. So just an announcement on October 7th. Let me see if Anne-Marie is here. She is not yet. So on October 7th, there's going to be a 45-minute webinar I'm hosting with Clark from Oracle. He's one of their reps, and Anne-Marie Prince from the San Antonio Spurs and Entertainment, who, if you don't know, that's a NBA basketball team. But they have other things like concerts at their venue. So this is my guest speaker for today, honey. I'm just kidding. But Anne-Marie and her team at the Spurs, they use Eloqua. They have for quite some time, and they were a marquee finalist this year. They didn't win the category, but they were a finalist, which is, in my mind, a huge achievement in itself. So she'll be on that webinar, as well as one of Eloqua product managers, Alexa, on the Oracle overall product management team, but she focuses on Eloqua. We're going to talk about, the title there is a little bit generic, improve your customer experience and win more with your map. But we're going to talk about multi-channel and how a lot of marketing automation platforms are getting better about having native channels besides email. Like SMS is, Eloqua's big next channel coming natively next year. For anybody that didn't know this, so when I was a Eloqua user, I think it was my 3rd year into using Eloqua back in like 2008. Eloqua 9, the older version of Eloqua that some people loved it, a lot of people didn't because it was not easy to use. But anyways, you could do email, you could send out automated voice reminders, which I used to prank my colleagues. It was cool. And then you could actually do direct mail, like print mail, I should say. It wasn't gifts or anything. And there was never any text. Eloqua started out as a website chat tool, like Drift, sort of. That's how the name Eloqua came about, to speak eloquently to your website visitors. But anyway, Eloqua actually used to have a lot more native marketing channels you could execute on out of the platform, but for a lot of different reasons, they went away from that and went the more, well, let's let people choose what print vendor they want to have Eloqua work with, and choose what text messaging vendor like Twilio that they want to have Eloqua talk with, and make apps for those things. So, but now I think what I'm hearing from a lot of marketers is, okay, cool, there are apps, but what about native? Like, I'd like to have both. So anyway, the next big reminder here, the second bullet. So Eloqua pods are moving to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is a term Oracle people say a lot. What does that even mean? So Eloqua pods, a pod in the technology world, basically just think of it for our case today of a bunch of different customers who use Eloqua can be on a server, and then those servers, boxes somewhere in a building, are part of a pod. They're coupled together to be a part of a pod. There's redundancies built in. So if your server is technically a box in Virginia, there's a redundancy to back it up in Toronto or perhaps somewhere else in the world. So if there's a fire in that data center in Virginia, you don't lose any downtime with Eloqua, very little. It will be instantly picked up by the Toronto data center. I learned about this in one of my first jobs. I'm not getting it exactly right. I'm sure it's not perfect. If you're an IT person, you're probably like, well, that's not exactly how it works, KP, but whatever. We get the idea, hopefully. So Eloqua servers and the pods. So just think of it as a bunch of Eloqua customers, your data, everything that runs Eloqua. The pods are all moving to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. What Oracle tells us is that Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is a faster framework, technically speaking, more reliable than what Eloqua is on today. I shouldn't say more reliable. It's supposed to be faster, but the thing I want to point out here is Pod 7 already moved to OCI. Pod 6 is next, October 22nd, so a little over a month away. The link is here. I'll share this in my follow-up email to everybody. But what it really means that you need to do is make sure that if you're using an app, not on an app cloud or marketplace, because that's different, but if you've had a custom app built like for an integration with your Eloqua, whether your company hosts that app, like maintains it, or a partner like Sojourn built it and maintains it on their own server, it needs to have the new Pod 6 public IP address, not whitelisted, safe listed to it. So there's that number 192, blah, blah, blah. The other thing to do with that is to also add to the allow list the URL of pod 6, which is secure.po6.eloqua.com. So those two tasks should be done. And typically it's an IT person. It's not somewhere you log into Eloqua and do this, to be clear. So, and it does not impact every single one of you today. Every Eloqua customer does not have custom apps with their Eloqua. So anyway, just want to make sure, hopefully that helps wrap your head a little bit around this. I struggled at first to really understand it. And Anyway, and then just for people on pod 1 through 4, which the majority of Eloqua customers today are on pods 1 through 4. It started out with pod 1, as the numbers kind of indicate, and then 2. So there are a lot of historical customers on pods 1 and 2. Those migrations to OCI will be in 2022. So we'll keep you posted on those. It's been bumped out. There's quite a bit involved on the Oracle side to do this, as you can imagine, like data centers, servers, pods, servers. So any further questions about that, you can send them to me. I will probably reach out to Oracle and get clarification on an answer if I don't know it, or if somebody on our team doesn't know it. But I will make sure you guys get the link to that Topliners article about it. And just to reiterate, every month I do this because I've been asked by a lot of people over years, like, where can I get free Eloqua training? Well, I always go to the Help Center. I have the Help Center bookmarked. I go there a lot. I just type in a word or words, try to figure out what I'm looking for. And the Help Center is the best that it's ever been since I've been an Eloqua user, with screenshots. So just to give you guys an idea, Pardot's Help Center does not have screenshots. It has bullets and instructions, but no screenshots, which to me drives me nuts because I like to see it so I can make sure it's like, okay, yes, I'm doing the right thing as I'm following the instructions. But the Help Center has in it links to videos. In most sections of the Help Center, there's a video. It's on YouTube. That's where Oracle hosts all their how-to videos that are openly accessible. So you can always just go to the Eloqua YouTube channel and find things there. And then Oracle University, just a reminder, Oracle has Eloqua Essentials, which is only like an hour or so worth of online free courses you can take to get the basics of Eloqua. So that's a good thing to start with if you're a newer Eloqua user, but also if you have somebody at your company that's like, can I just like take something to learn a little bit more about Eloqua and not spend hours and hours of time to do that? Eloqua Essentials is a good place for them to go. And they do not have to have an Oracle University license to do that. And the last thing here is that we do record this every month and post the EUG recordings on our Sojourn website on the resources area. So you can find it there. Actually, we have a special place in our resources hub. We use Overflow, a user group section. So I will make sure you get the recording though in the follow-up email. So with that, again, any questions that come through related to what I just chatted about, anything else you can think of, especially on Alora's topic of email deliverability, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A. If you have a question about something not related to anything we're talking about today, that's just Eloqua related or marketing related, feel free to pop those questions in as well. It might be a good idea for a topic to cover in the next few months. Also, hopefully we can get you an answer today. And then at the end of the call, if there's time, if you want to speak, I can make it so you're unmuted and you can ask your question or share a tip. That'd be awesome. We'd love to get more involvement from those of you who are attending, no matter what company you work for. So if you are open to sharing a tip or even presenting, just let me know, and I can line you up to be a presenter, but also just unmute you so you can share your tip. Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and stop sharing my video. So Laura, like I said earlier, she's going to talk to you guys about email deliverability and some tips around that to help us get our emails in the inbox. So Laura, the floor is all yours. Let me stop sharing. And you
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I can see deliverability tips.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Well, I think the picture you had was way better of mine. Hi, everyone. As KP said, I'm Ana Laura. I'm from the Sojourn UK team. I'm a marketing automation consultant. And yes, I do not have a British accent, as you can probably tell. I was born in Argentina, and although I've been living in London for a very long time, I clearly kept my strong accent. I'm very happy to be here today presenting at the Eloqua User Group. Thank you, KP, so much for inviting me. I think I joined Sojourn, I think almost like 1 year ago. Before then, I worked as a consultant, always with Pardot and Eloqua. However, I come from the client side. So I worked in big companies for about like 6 years as a head of marketing before moving into the consulting world. So I think I do value that experience because it helps me understand, our clients' needs and also the experience of the user with Eloqua, what's their knowledge, etc. So that's a little bit about me. I think what I was thinking about, which topics to cover about deliverability, because it's quite a broad topic, and there's a lot of different things that we could discuss. I think the main thing for me, because we don't have like a full hour and we don't have a long time, but I think is kind of like present or share something that is far from being super technical, but rather actionable, so that you can perhaps hopefully take home something to implement, and some tips on what are the things that you could be doing to monitor deliverability and also understand better this topic. So what is email deliverability? It's kind of like self-explanatory, but mainly it means getting the emails to the inbox. So avoiding ended up in the spam or like junk folder. Historically, that was based on content and the sending domain, but now it's mainly based on the reputation of the sending IP address. So for that, I'm sure some of you might be familiar with sender score. Basically, every email sender, meaning every IP address, has a reputation based on the email behavior. So for instance, if you never sent emails before from your dedicated IP, then you will have to start building that reputation by completing that IP warming process, right? And you can monitor that reputation through sender score, for instance. We're going to see some examples, but basically that will help you understand how you're kind of like you can measure that reputation, and you can measure that all the different metrics are in place and nothing is kind of like off in that process. And it's not only for the IP warming process, but also for kind of like monitoring during like regularly. So to understand what it isn't working, or to flag any deliverability issues that you may have. So I think the one thing that is good to remember is that this is not something that like monitoring deliverability, and not only sender score, but other things that we will cover, it's not something that we should do only or during or after IP warming. And for that, there's a lot of different tools. I have to say that the ones that I kind of like use the most are sender score and MX Toolbox. You might be familiar with these ones. And there's a few other things that we can do to kind of like check the setup and that everything's working well. But these two, I think sender score and MX Toolbox are the ones that I've used the most. By the way, if there's anything that throughout the presentation you would like to share, or any other tips that you have, please feel free to write on the chat. I think it will be great to also learn from you all. One of the things that is also super valuable, and I found that this is something that it can be done also, again, during an IP warming process, but also have these reports set up that you can do it through agents in Eloqua Instead. So all of these reports are available so far in the catalog, and you can schedule them to have them to monitor them weekly. So for instance, what are the things that I would probably be aware of when it comes to deliverability? Of course, there's a lot of things that you could be checking for performance, but just for the purpose of deliverability, I think making sure that you don't have any weird kind of like, or unusual, I wouldn't say weird, but unusual messages on the bounce back report. I will think that a usual message, for instance, will be that the inbox is full from the person that you're trying to send the message to, the email to. But if there's something that is completely off, then it will be good to perhaps log an SR and have support helping you with that. Then the other report that I'm sure some of you might be familiar with is a typical email analysis overview. That is just like a super short report, which will tell you, will show you soft bounces and hard bounces. And I added this here, making sure that they remain under 5 to 8%. I think that's the tip that you can get into, like understanding like, okay, above this is something that is like a red flag. and it needs to be investigated. And then making sure that the spam complaints remain under 0.01%, which is really low, but that's important as well. And when I was mentioning for the sender score report, I think not report, but actually like the overview that you can get when you enter that the dedicated IP address you have, the rates on that report, if you have enough data, it will show you a rate, and it should be, the range should be between 95 to 100, showing that there's no issues. And then I added that screenshot here because it will show you the ideal results. So you'll see all those screens there. And that's for the sender score report that you can check regularly or while doing IP warming, for instance, as well. So I think that the one thing that is sometimes is the question is like how often and how can you perhaps what will be the ideal process to have like reports in place. I think it depends on the sending volume and how often the company that you work for is like sending emails. But I think a weekly touch base, a weekly review, it's quite optimal. There's a lot of different things that you could be scheduling. I wouldn't recommend just having the Eloqua reports, but perhaps a whole different things. And I added on the tips and the kind of like something that you can get, sort of like a checkbox checklist, sorry. Everything that you could potentially check on a weekly basis as well to make sure you're not having any issues. There's also postmaster tools. Perhaps some of you are also familiar with this. This tool will help you monitor any kind of issue that you might have with Gmail and G Suite. So any Gmail accounts, if you're not emailing any Gmail accounts, then that probably isn't very helpful for you, but it's probably for like everyone nowadays, a potential issue. So the one thing that it will definitely require when you're trying to check your reports is the confirmation of ownership of the mailing domain. So you have to do a very small DNS change. There's kind of like super simple instructions, but I think it's worth mentioning that. The metrics that you can see are the ones that we've been talking about. So the IP domain reputation, you can see the spam rates as well. And also the kind of like all the setup for like if everything's fine in terms of like all the records. So SPF, the KIM, the mark, if everything is authenticated, like the messages are authenticated as well. So this is something that I will also recommend as a tool for you to use. I don't know if anyone is like currently using Postmaster tools, but I think it's super helpful as well to take into account. So in terms of like, I think kind of like, I wanted to have these tips kind of like into different, I don't know if buckets, but and then like summarizing them and putting them in a way that you can see them and perhaps can be used as a checklist. But from the, I think, setup to the database quality and then content of the email or other things that you should consider, and also reporting. What are the things that perhaps I'm currently doing and then I found helpful as well. So in the setup, MX Toolbox, I think is the most important one I've used to make sure all the sending domains are configured properly. So if you don't know how to check this, I think we can definitely, this is way more technical perhaps, and we should have like a full session for this. But it's quite simple to at least have a quick view in MX Toolbox on how everything should be kind of like set up properly. For this, what I would recommend is like making sure you understand which are the sending domains that are on the email setup that you have, the email defaults in Eloqua. For everything that has to do with database quality, I think main thing and super important, always excluding hard bounces or unsubscribes from all of your segments. And which is kind of like, that's the most important thing. But the second one, and perhaps is also relevant for performance, is like deleting inactive audiences, those contacts that are very inactive, that you are perhaps putting on a segment and you can tell that you've been sending emails and the open rate is like not existent. Then perhaps these are contacts that you should remove on a quarterly basis, not that often, but every quarter or every 6 months, to keep a clean database as well, and maintain like a high quality database. Another thing that could be helpful is to put contacts who had a soft bounce back within the past kind of like month on a waiting list. And then you can send that the campaign emails after the quarantine period. And finally, something that is also perhaps important depending on the volume, but I think when you have a lot of sales representatives dealing with email addresses, I think they can validate them and make sure you have the right, especially when there's manual input on your database. That's quite helpful as well. There's some other tips, like for instance, double opt-in, making sure the email address is correct. That's something that's also a best practice. But these are, I guess, the ones that I identified as the key ones for or the ones that I use and that be helpful for me. And in terms of reporting, this is kind of like a summary of what we covered, but making sure you're monitoring bounce rates and stay within the kind of like rates that we mentioned before. And then monitoring sender score, as I mentioned as well. I think a weekly basis is the recommended cadence, but that obviously depends on each team and company. And then the other one that I think is quite helpful is adding the list source as a mandatory field when you're, if you have an upload template, so that you can keep track of where bad data is coming from. So that's a good one. So then you can easily identify them. And finally, another one that perhaps could be helpful, especially when emailing like Microsoft as well. It's like applying perhaps fixes in formatting the HTML code that might impact deliverability as well. So I think that's everything we had so far. I don't know if there are any questions or any comments or anyone that would like to share another tip that might be helpful for the rest of the audience.
We didn't have any come through the chat or the Q&A related to deliverability yet, but if anybody does have a question or if you want to be unmuted, just chat us and we can do that. I will say email deliverability has been, for me personally, one of the hardest things to learn, understand, know what to do, how to advise people. It took me years, a couple of years when I first started consulting to really learn it. And be able to articulate to people what it means. And there are still times where I, learn something new and struggle with it because it's not easy stuff, right? Somebody did put a question in the Q&A. Are there tips around preventing emails from going into the promotions tab? I'm trying to understand that question. Are there any tips around preventing emails from going? Oh, like, so getting marked as a promotional email automatically by Gmail or Hotmail or something like that. I don't know if Laura, if you have any thoughts there. I'm trying to think.
I think that, I don't know if this is the right answer, to be honest, but my thoughts on that is like, I think the subject line and the content of the email might affect that, especially the wording around like, or keywords that you might use. But that's a very interesting question. And I never had that issue before, but I can definitely follow up on that one.
We will give you more details. So that's Jordan asking about that. And what I'll say is, when we've worked on just getting your email into the inbox is one feat, but then to get it in, but then it's more marked as a promotional email. I think typically where you see that happen is when it's coming from Sojourn versus Karin Pindle, right? When it's coming from an organization, like think about when you as a consumer receive emails, and when it comes from a person, it's more likely to get through. I mean, that's why a lot of spammers look like they're coming from a human being. It looks like another layer further when it's actually, you know, not obviously they've used something like Eloqua to send the email and it's not directly coming from me, it's Eloqua sending it, making it look like it's coming from me. Like our Eloqua User Group meeting emails, I don't do that out of our Gmail and send those to you guys. Our Eloqua sends those to you, obviously. I think you mostly know that. But you know, there are certain things that people have gotten away from with marketing emails to make it look less like a marketing communication, and also for this reason, to Jordan's point, to not get it marked as promotional. Or potentially even worse, is a spam filter to just not even let it get to the inbox because it looks like it's not even necessarily spam, but they might have high security on their email and not want anything promotional to get through. We actually have that set up at our Sojourn using our Gmail. So those emails typically, I could probably pull one up. Let me see if I can pull one up right now. Let me share my screen. So this is my Gmail, and Sojourn is automatically filtering, like these do not go to my inbox. I know this is a little bit different than the promotional, but there's definitely a theme. Most of these are not from people. These first two are, but I have never communicated with this person. And yeah, you know, obviously people are trying to make it look like we've had a communication going. I haven't heard back from you. Well, you never heard back from me because we've never ever communicated in our lives. So, but there are certain things. I'm trying to see if this one has any, there may not be anything obvious in this one. I'm looking for, you know, if you think about the most common things that you do when you send an email to your colleagues, versus when somebody is spamming you. So when I think about, like, when I message my colleagues, I don't put buttons and headers in my communications to like Ana Laura. That doesn't mean we all want to step away from that, but there are a lot more chances of the email being kicked back because that's just not normal communication over human to human emailing each other. We don't do pretty things typically in our communications. So some spam filters are that picky that they will look for things like that, and opt out language that's inappropriate, or you know, some of those things are more obvious, that there's certain words. Click here is also, you know, something that can get you flagged as spam or promotional if not spam. So using those old school marketing terms like act now, you know, or download now, like I don't say that to my colleagues over email or to customers. Like, for one, it's too commanding, but language to use, but it's also very marketing type of language speak. So this is, I don't know what this is, ABM something or other. I'm trying to see if there's any more obvious stuff that I can pull from here for you guys. That looks like it's the same company. Yep, and then people mimicking that an email has been sent or resent or forwarded. This person has never done this, actually sent the below communications to me, so they're faking that. So that's probably why hopefully our spam filter is picking it up. But so anyway, I know that doesn't give you all the tips you might be looking for, Jordan, but we can follow up and see if there's anything else we can think of. Promotion, getting marked as promotion should not impact your metrics, other than typically, like for me, I use personally Hotmail. I created my first email account back in 1999, I think, when I was a freshman in college, and didn't, you know, really even know how to use the internet quite yet. But Hotmail will mark something as promotional, but you have the option to have it go to your inbox, or it can just stay in a promotional area. I think Gmail does something very similar. So it doesn't, you know, it's not marked as spam, but the recipient has to make the choice to move it to their inbox, which then would open it unless they just click on it in the promotional area. I'm trying to think if there's any, let me look and see if there's any other questions that have come through before I move on to my topic. There are not. So, okay. If any other questions come through, you guys know this works, just feel free to pop them into the Q&A. But now I want to talk about another super hot topic. So Ana Laura, thank you for going through email deliverability. we have shown, I think in the past, gosh, it's probably been a year, but that there are reports. So I'm not talking about my topic yet. That you can help you. She's shown you some things of tools you can use to check on your deliverability. I also like to just look at the hard bounce back rate for customers and their global unsubscribe rate consistently, like at least every month. I used to actually be responsible, the CMO I worked for at a company called SourceFire, which no longer exists. Cisco bought them, but at SourceFire, the CMO I worked for, Michelle said, KP, every month I need in a PowerPoint, and I need you to keep track of it historically of what our hard bounce back overall rate is for all the emails sent out of our Eloqua and our global unsubscribe rate. And of course, things like opens and click-throughs were important to her as well, specifically to email marketing. That was the main channel we were communicating on. And so for me, when our hard bounce back rate got above like 2 or 3%, I dug into why. Like I looked at the hard bounce back report in Eloqua to figure out what's happening. And then with the global unsubscribe rate, I would, if it got above, I forget what it was, I think like 1%, we were pretty picky. Our metrics were very aggressive, but I would look to see, was there one email or two that really spurred most of those or caused most of those global unsubscribes? Was it maybe something creative that we tried and did a lot of imagery in an email, or totally made it look like it was coming from a person and it didn't just land, it didn't go well, so people unsubscribed? So, or was it like what I did today and a couple of days ago with you guys? I sent out errors in our communications about this meeting. Like I think Tuesday, the reminder said, hey, just a reminder, Eloqua User Group meeting is in a few days on July, whatever it was, 16th. Obviously it's September, so that was a boo-boo on my part. So apologize to you guys for that. But that, I think, caused 2 people to unsubscribe. It just doesn't look professional. So I get it. But anyway, so just keeping an eye on your hard bounce backs and global unsubscribes is just another thing to consider there on, I would say, at least a monthly basis, if not more. Okay, so switching gears here. Apple Mail is changing as of Monday with their new iOS or operating system. It's going to be iOS 15. People can download it starting Monday. So if you have an iPhone or Mac or something, and you're using Apple Mail, like I use Apple Mail on my iPhone, I'll have the choice on the right-hand side to choose an option that's not there today, Mail Privacy Protection. It's called MPP. The default will be protect email or mail activity. And the other option I'd have to choose is don't protect mail activity. Now, there are estimates by analysts that 85, I think, to 90% of people will choose the first option. What does that mean for you if you don't know already? So what that means is Eloqua won't be able to track if a human being opened your email sent out of Eloqua or Pardot or Marketo or MailChimp, whatever you're sending your emails from to people. To people with Apple Mail, you won't be able to see if if a human being opened your Eloqua sent email or if it was the Apple Mail app that opened the email. So when that option is selected, the Apple Mail app opens the email, checks it, it counts as a false open. It's called a false positive open technically, but false open. So it looks like Anna Laura opened the email I just sent to her out of our Eloqua, but she hasn't yet. She could. So actually in that case, let's say that Apple Mail does its security thing here, it opens it, and then it gets to Anna Laura, and she opens it. Now there's 2 opens. And anyway, what will happen is it will increase the total number of email opens that you're seeing in Eloqua reports, and it will also obscure the times of when it was open, because in some cases, if like say Anna Laura opens it a few more times, and it can get confusing of, well, was it human that opened it? Was it the Apple Mail app, the technology that opened it? So on Monday, I believe it was, Oracle sent out an announcement. If you didn't see it already, the link is here. Again, I will send this to you in a follow-up email later today, but Oracle is responding, thankfully, and I don't know when these changes are happening though. I put a comment or a question out on Topliners directly under this announcement. Somebody else did too, and asking when are these changes, these feature changes happening in Eloqua? Hopefully like this weekend, but I don't know. So the first thing is in Insight reporting, there's going to be the ability to see auto open as a category, so that for your opens, if you want to filter out the auto opens, you will be able to do that. So just to reiterate that coming to Eloqua Insight when, I don't know for sure. If anybody from Oracle is here and knows, please pop it into the chat when these features are going to be live in Eloqua. But that was not communicated yet. So if you know, let us know. But the first thing is Insight reports for email opens. You'll be able to filter and exclude if you want to the auto opens. This is specifically to Apple Mail today. However, this is likely going to be a feature that Gmail is going to offer, Hotmail, et cetera, Outlook. So Apple Mail is not going to be the last one to do this. The second thing is actually number 2, 3, and 4 are only applicable if you're using Eloqua's Advanced Intelligence or AI add-on. So send time optimization is one of the features that comes with it. It's going to be modified as a feature to exclude auto opens. The third thing is contact fatigue analysis. It relies on opens. That's part of its algorithm. It will rely only on email clicks and conversions. Like if somebody clicks on a link in an email and then submits a form, that's a conversion. So it won't use opens. And then the predicted email subject line feature, again, part of the AI add-on, it will exclude auto opens. It will still use opens, but it won't use auto opens. So basically, as far as Eloqua will be able to identify that Apple Mail did an auto open, a false open, you'll be able to see those backed out of the AI features. It will automatically happen soon once this is live in Eloqua for the AI add-on. And then for Insight reports, you'll have the ability to exclude auto opens. It won't automatically do that. You'll have to set that up if you want to. And then I'm just looking to see. And someone mentioned on the chat, hopefully the auto open metric will also be available in API and engage. Yes, that would be helpful to see that as an activity, like auto open versus Laura actually opened up the email, the human being. But I'm going to guess that's going to be future state, but that's a great feature idea if you want to pop it on top liners so we can all upvote it. By the way, you can vote down feature requests too. I don't think I've seen that very often, but you know, you can do the up arrow or the down arrow. I think once I accidentally hit the down arrow or thumbs down and I didn't mean to, so I quickly just clicked the other option. I think it was because I wanted to see what it did. Well, it worked. It voted down the feature requester idea, which was not what I wanted to do. So the long and short of this is that Apple Mail, again, they're spearheading this, but false opens have been happening for years, more related to spam filters that was, you know, so companies, we send out emails to people, you all, like from our Eloqua, your company has some layer of spam protection. Barracuda is one of the most common ones out there. And depending on how Barracuda is set up, it might do something like what Apple Mail is already going to be doing. So false opens have been happening for years. Barracuda has been around for a long time as a email spam protection tool. It does other things as well, but so this isn't anything brand new to the email marketing world, but with Apple being obviously a company that a lot of people use their mail platform, their email client, Apple Mail, it's obviously gotten the attention of marketers worldwide. So lost my train of thought. Somebody wrote in, keep in mind this applies to Apple Mail from iPhone, and if people use Apple Mail app on their Mac computer, so it's wherever you're using Apple Mail, whether it's on your computer, your like your desktop, your laptop, your iPhone, tablet, it would apply there. So I lost my train of thought for the other stuff. Oh, so we've had a few customers asking us about, like, we can't shift overnight, KP, to not using opens, email opens in our reporting metrics that we communicate to each other in our organization to say that a campaign is successful or not, to our higher ups who look to us to say, how effective were you last quarter? And email opens are one of the metrics that are used to show success, and also where to improve. I get that. Like, that's what the CMO I work for that I mentioned earlier, Michelle at SourceFire, when we were looking at if a campaign was successful or not, would say like 5 emails in that campaign, the overall email open rate was one of the first things we looked at. And then click-through rate as well. With a lower threshold, like our open rate for customer communications, I think was at least 30-40% to achieve for unique opens. And then for click-throughs, it was something like, I think 10 or 15%, which was very, again, aggressive. And we didn't always achieve it. But anyway, so I get that it's a hard shift to go from not using email open. And I don't think everybody can do that. But because Oracle has responded, thankfully, and is saying there are some things that are coming to Eloqua to help here, the ability to see auto open and Insight and have it automatically not being used for some of the AI features is just one step forward, I think, that Oracle is doing to help Eloqua. It's not perfect, but it's something to help us know that, like, when we pull up a report, we can back out the auto opens. Some people have asked about, can I exclude the contacts in Eloqua who we have seen are typically opening our email sent to them with Apple Mail? Yes, there is a way to technically do that, because we're going to be able to see auto open and Insight, and hopefully eventually right in Eloqua. You would be able to do that. For now, it's going to be a little bit, I think, manual process to do that, because Insight, I don't think is going to be able to push that automatically back to Eloqua, like to show here are the 500 people in your Eloqua that we've seen the auto open activity consistently for. And keep in mind, I open emails on Apple Mail, but most of the time I do it through Gmail. So I use two different things. So just because I might have opened one of your 10 emails you sent me in the last month using Apple Mail, but the rest I use with Gmail, which this doesn't apply yet, you wouldn't want to automatically exclude me from receiving future emails. So I think the reason why people want to exclude Apple Mail recipient contacts in Eloqua is because they just don't want that auto open to happen and skew their metrics one way or another. So anyway, someone asked, could you supply the list of domains you're concerned about? You could. So what Insight will be able to show us is we can run a report to see the contacts who we can see that open activity was auto open. And then we can see if there's consistency across an organization, like if they all work for, I don't know, NetApp, and then we can tell most people at NetApp use Apple devices. Maybe they all have Macs. I don't know. That's pretty cool. And then you can try to figure out if you want to include them in your metrics or not. Like, personally speaking, I wouldn't exclude anybody, but I don't work for your organization. So, but at Sojourn, we have no plans to change how we do our segmentation. We still plan to send everybody everything as usual, and know that we're going to see changes in our open, our total opens, our unique opens, the click to open rates, and focus more on our click-throughs. We've been trying to do that for years, focus on having a higher click-through rate, lower hard bounce back rate, lower global unsubscribe rate. Those are our key three metrics. Of course, conversions are like the #1 metric that we aim for, to have people convert for most email communications to do something. Like watch the recording that I'll send you guys later. So it's not always that easy though, I get that. So any other questions about this? I just want to make sure if anything comes through. Let me check the Q&A. Oh, there is a question in the Q&A. Does the auto open only happen once? For example, if Eloqua shows that a contact opened an email 2 or more times, would that indicate that the customer actually opened the email? So not necessarily. So auto open will only appear in Insight if Apple's Mail app did the open. The way that Oracle is able to tell that, like one of the ways you can tell that is, hang on, it's explained in this article, is if Mozilla 5 or something, they explain it in this article, so I probably shouldn't try to go down this path because I'm not that technical when it comes to this part. But the Topliners article is here. This is what I'm going to send you guys. And what happens is you click this link, you get a PDF to download. And this is actually what has the information in it. So where is it? It explains, they did actually a really nice job with this. Where is it? It has to do with Mozilla 5. So it's part of the agent or the application that is doing that auto open on the Apple Mail side, not the recipient, not the human being. That's part of the way that they're figuring that out. But let me go back to your question. So Okay, so you're basically asking, would the auto open only happen once? It should only happen once on the Apple side. So if you sent me an email out of your Eloqua, and if I'm using Apple Mail and I have this enabled, there should only be one auto open. And then if I open it once, now we've got 2 opens tracked on one auto open and one Karin Pindle open. Now, if I go and open it on my Gmail, your same email, you've got 2 Karin Pindle open activities and you've still got the one auto open. There shouldn't be for one contact more than one auto open. Hopefully that answered your question. So if you see one auto open and then you see a second open, that should be the human being. So that's how they're able, that's part of how Oracle is able to change their AI algorithms so that they can still include opens from the human, but back out the auto opens where they can identify those. I talked to a vendor, Motiva, a little bit about like how Oracle, actually I didn't talk, it was a verbal conversation, but over email, my colleague and I asked them about this, and they're a little concerned on how Oracle is identifying an auto open. So they build apps for Eloqua and they do this differently. They have AI functionality for Eloqua, and they're going to use something different that's more like a list of ways that you know if it's an auto open, because this is only one of the key ways they said from their standpoint. But this is beyond my area of expertise, so I'm going to just stop and say I'm glad that Oracle's doing something. Is it perfect? No. Is it perfect what Marketo or Adobe's doing for Marketo, what Salesforce doing for Pardot? No. I think that this is something that I wish they were all further ahead of, and it was perfect, but you know, I think the good thing that's going to come of this is that I know we're almost done here, but that Apple Mail is really, you know, used by millions of people. So it's forcing Oracle, it's forcing Adobe, it's forcing MailChimp, et cetera, Salesforce with Pardot and an Email Studio or ExactTarget. It's forcing them to address this and improve their products to handle auto opens a special way that makes it so that you as a marketer don't have to do as much with it. It's not there yet though, right? Like they're having to figure out something. It's a Band-Aid. So eventually there will be some things better in Eloqua to address this, because Gmail's not far behind, and Microsoft with its various tools like Outlook and Hotmail, they're not going to be far from offering this up to their email users. So that means you've got almost everybody you're going to send an email to who is going to have the ability to enable something like what people will have with specifically like iPhones. And in that case, we're going to have lots of auto opens show up. And remember, auto open is what Oracle's calling this for Eloqua. It might be different for other vendors. So if you're like looking at Marketo or Pardot for some reason or whatever else, it might not be the exact same term that they'll use, but just, you know, bear in mind that we're going to have to get through this together. It's an unfortunate thing for email marketers. However, personally speaking, I am grateful for this because I get too much junk email, both at work, but especially in my personal email. And this is just one measure that's being done by one of the big vendors to protect their consumers from spammers. Now I realize most of you, hopefully all of you, are not spammers and this doesn't apply, but I think we'll see, you know, personally outside of work with like your own Apple Mail you might be using, or Gmail and Hotmail, etc., that you'll get less junk to have to filter through. So anyway, so I think there is good that comes of it. I know it's a scramble for us as marketers though, so I can empathize with that. So shoot, we don't really have time for our poll. I'll skip it for this month. Just don't want to rush it, but we'll come back to it. And then, are there any other questions? I think there's another one that came through, or tips. Let me see. No other questions there. Let me look here. Thank you for the positive feedback somebody put in that was explained well. Okay, well, you guys know where to reach me. I will be following up later today. I really appreciate you all joining. There's one of our kittens. We found 5 kittens under one of our sheds here in Tennessee and took them in and are trying to find homes for them. So if anybody wants a kitty cat, let me know. Our next Eloqua User Group meeting will be the 3rd Thursday of the month in October, which will be October 21st. I look forward to it. Hopefully I'll be wearing a sweatshirt or something like that. It is still hot here, but same time, same place. Feel free to register if you'd like now. It's the same URL each month. I just changed the month in it, and then next year it'll be like 10/22. But I'll also send you guys an email invitation to make sure that you are aware of it. And feel free to encourage any others to join if you'd like. And once again, if anybody would like to present, please let me know. We've only in the last year, I think, had like 2 actual Eloqua customers present. So not Oracle people, not Sojourn people, not partners of Oracle, like talking about their app for Eloqua. That's all great. We're going to continue that, but I would love to have more marketers actually presenting, even if it's a 5-minute quick tip or less, or a 20-30 minute, presentation. So I'm excited for the October 7th webinar with Anne-Marie Prince from the Spurs. I think you guys will enjoy that and get some value from it if you're able to join it. But people are leaving, so I will take a hint and end this meeting. Thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your Thursday and a lovely weekend, and stay safe, everybody. If you're in America and probably everywhere else in the world, please wear a mask. Let's save each other. All right, thanks everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.